Hi and welcome back to my channel. This is Juliet here. Today I am doing a collaboration with Shawn the Book Maniac. The page 112 tag. So he sent me three pages, page 112, and 3 novels, and I don't know what they are at the moment. And I have sent him 3 pages from 3 novels from my end. The idea is that we read the pages and then have a quick chat about what we think of the book, whether we would want to read more. So let's start with novel number 1.
Do you mean that he expects to come and stay on Grace? Who is Grace, Nina? What's the name of this boy? Nina asked. His parents are a count and countess, in business as I told you. Of course all that doesn't mean anything now, but they're in very good standing. He should have been with you last Friday. Well, he wasn't. There must have been a misunderstanding about that. Oh, Lou, you don't know how good it is to hear your voice. Nina, you're becoming emotional. Wouldn't you agree it's just about time that somebody helped you to restore some kind of order into your life? Oh, please don't do that. I hate to cut you short, said Richard from the hatch. It's only that I can hardly expect my staff to be in time if I'm late myself. His voice was courteous to the point of diffidence, and Nina, giving way a little, let herself imagine what it would be like to be on Richard's staff, and to be directed in everything else by Louise, and to ebb and flow without volition in the warmth of love and politeness. Goodbye, Louise. As soon as you get to England... Forgive me, Richard. It was my sister. I don't know how she got your number. I haven't seen her in 5 years. I sensed that she wasn't used to being contradicted. No.
So this is quite difficult, this. Obviously we've just come into a telephone conversation between Nina and her sister, as it turns out at the end. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the writing. Not sure whether I'm particularly excited by what's on the page. It's got a nice pace to it. Something's going on, you know. We've got Nina suddenly being phoned by her sister, and she hasn't seen her in 5 years. So there's a bit of intrigue and mystery there. So yeah, I think I'd potentially want to find out more about this book. And I am kind of intrigued to find out why Nina's sister, or Nena's sister, has contacted her after 5 years. And I'm not entirely sure what Grace is. Is Grace a boat? I don't know. So a little bit confused by that. But yes, I think on balance I would potentially want to find out a bit more about this novel before deciding whether to read it or not. Okay, now on to book 2.
He stood there a long time. Then he became worried that Ludwig might come and close the cellar door with both of them locked inside. He didn't know what more to do except to wheel the sheets near to the washing machine and leave them there till morning. Now he was making a barricade behind the apartment door. He used the Biedermeier chair, slammed up against a wooden shelf that Amelia had taken out of her wardrobe. Then he carried all the pots and pans, one by one, from the kitchen to the door and heaped them onto and round the chair. He knew the door might still be pushed open, but at least he would hear the pangs clinking and crashing if Ludwig tried to get in. Then he would run to the lavatory and lock himself inside. By the time the barricade was finished, Gustav felt so tired that he thought he might fall over. He wanted to run a bath, to wash himself clean of all that had happened to him in the last 24 hours, but he was afraid that if he did this, he might slip under the water and drown.
So this one isn't set in the UK, obviously. With the with the names, I'm thinking Germany or Austria. It's a really exciting excerpt. There's lots happening in it. I mean, something terrible's happening. Ludwig might come round and obviously do him harm. He's creating a barricade in his own flat, I think. And then towards the end, he talks about running a bath and wanting to wash himself clean after what's happened in the last 24 hours. So clearly lots has happened. Whether this book is for me, I don't know, because it sounds a bit like a sort of thriller or a crime thriller, or to do with war or something along those lines. And I'm not sure that those kind of novels particularly interest me. But again, I cannot fault the writing. I mean, when you think about it, you just picked a random page 112 and there's so much going on this page. I think that's probably the sign of a good book, when it, you know, that page 112 has a lot going on it. So I'll be intrigued to find out what this book is, but my gut reaction is this is probably not the type of novel I would like to read. But we'll see at the end. Okay, so I had to take a break yesterday because the third book that Shawn sent me, I recognised that I'd already read. We were using our Goodreads feeds to work out which books we had and hadn't read in order to work out which novels to send to each other. And my Goodreads list was not up to date because it was a book that I had in physical copy and not one I bought through Amazon, because I tend to move my Amazon list onto Goodreads regularly. Anyway, so it's the following day now and time for book number 3.
The kind of life I wanted to live, yes, but I was not at all sure what it was. I had flashes of insight and promptings, but nothing definite. So when I was finished at the university, duly ticketed as an MA in history, I still wanted time to find my way, and like many a man in my case, I took to schoolmastering. Was it a dead end? Did I thereby join the ranks of those university men of promise, whose promise is never fulfilled? You can answer that question as readily as I, headmaster, and certainly the answer must be no. I took to teaching like a duck to water, and like a duck I never paid exaggerated attention to the medium in which I moved. I applied for a job at Colborne College, principally because, being a private school, it did not demand that I have a provincial teacher's trained certificate. I didn't want to waste another year getting that, and I didn't really think I would stay in teaching. I also liked the fact that Colborne was a boys' school. I never wanted to teach girls. Don't, in fact. I think they are best served by the kind of education devised by men for men. I have been a good teacher because I have never thought much about teaching. I just worked through the curriculum and insisted on high standards. I never played favourites, never tried to be popular, never set my heart on the success of any clever boy, and took good care that I knew my stuff. I was not easily approachable, but if approached I was civil and serious to the boy who approached me. I have coached scores of boys privately for scholarships, and I have never taken a fee for it. Of course I have enjoyed all of this, and I suppose my enjoyment had its influence on the boys. As I have grown older, my bias, the oddly recurrent themes of history, which are also the themes of myth, has asserted itself, and why not? But when I first stepped into a Colborne classroom, wearing the gown that we were all expected to wear then, I never thought that it would be more than 40 years before I left it for good. Simply from the school's point of view, I suppose my life has seemed odd and dry, though admittedly useful. As the years wore on, I was finally acquitted of the suspicions that hangs over every bachelor schoolmaster, that he is a homosexual, either overt or frying in some smoky flame of his own devising.
So, both as a former teacher and a recent graduate from university, this extract was right up my street. I mean, again, well written, I wasn't expecting anything else. But also, it's a novel similar to the third one that Shawn sent me yesterday, which actually was Stoner by John Williams, which is basically the sort of life of an academic professor. His sort of quite unremarkable life, but actually when you look at the detail of his life, everyone's lives are remarkable. This seems similar, this extract. It's clearly someone who's looking back across their long career in teaching. So I'm immediately interested because I say I'm a teacher, and I was really interested in his description of himself as a teacher. Particularly, I have never played favourites, never tried to be popular, never set my heart out on the success of a clever boy, and took care that I knew my stuff. I was not easily approachable, but if approached I was civil. I think every teacher would want to be that kind of teacher, someone that is approachable but doesn't get too involved in the young people's lives. That was something probably that I did get too involved. I did potentially parent them a bit too much. So I would definitely want to read this novel because I would want to find out a bit more about what this novel is about. Is it about his life as a teacher? I mean, the end bit there is interesting, and the fact that it was assumed that he would be homosexual, so an unmarried schoolmaster was assumed to be homosexual. But it says, as the years wore on, I was finally acquitted of the suspicion that hangs over every bachelor schoolmaster. So there's a relationship in there that I want to find out more about as well. So out of the 3 novels so far, this is the one that is more up my street. This is just about someone's life following university, which is something that I'm interested in, and it's about a teacher, and I think we're always interested in reading about people from our own professions. Okay, so now I've read the 3 extracts and briefly talked about my feelings on them. It's now time for me to actually open the document that tells me the titles and authors of the extracts. Okay. So the first one I think I've got on my shelf somewhere and I've not read it. It's Offshore by Penelope Fitzgerald. I need to have a look for that and see. The second one was by Rose Tremaine. I've never read anything from Rose Tremaine. It's called the Gustav Sonata. And the third one is Fifth Business by Robertson Davis, which was my favourite. Okay, so I thought I had this one on my shelf. So it's something I've never read, Offshore by Penelope Fitzgerald. And actually it does look really interesting. It looks like the kind of book I would want to read, and it's interesting that I didn't pick that up from the extract. It says on the back, on Battersea Reach, a mixed bag of the temporary lost and the patently eccentric live on houseboats, rising and falling with the tide of the Thames. So I guess the Grace thing in the extract was one of the houseboats. So belonging to neither land nor sea, they belong to one another in a motley yet kindly society. There is Morris, by occupation a male prostitute, by happenstance a receiver of stolen goods, by nature a friend to all, and Richard, an ex-Navy man whose boat, much like its owner, dominates the reach, and that must be Grace. Then there is Nina, an abandoned wife and mother of 2 young girls running wild on the muddy foreshore. It is Nina's domestic predicament that, as it deepens, draws the relations among this disparate community together into ever more complex patterns. It's a very little novel, it's only 50,000 words long, it's almost a novella. I have to say, from reading the back, I would be more interested in reading it than I would be on page 1112. So I might leave this one out now and actually give it a go and see what I think. So a little bit about Penelope Fitzgerald. What I found interesting was that she didn't embark on her literary career until the age of 60. So there's hope. One day I might end up writing a novel that gets published, who knows. After graduating from Somerville College, Oxford, she worked at the BBC during the war and edited a literary journal, then ran a bookshop, taught at various schools, and her early novels draw upon those many experiences. She died in April 2000 at the age of 83. Okay, so the Gustav Sonata by Rose Tremaine, and I've never read any of her books. It is about Gustav Pearl, who grows up in a small town in Switzerland, I'm getting this off Goodreads by the way, where the horrors of the Second World War seem only a distant echo. An only child, he lives alone with Amelia, the mother he adores but who treats him with bitter severity. He begins an intense friendship with a Jewish boy his age, talented and mercurial, Anton Zweibel, a budding concert pianist. The novel follows Gustav's family, tracing the roots of his mother's anti-Semitism and its impact on her son and his beloved friend. Moving backward to the war years and the painful repercussions of an act of conscience, and forward through the lives of the careers of Gustav and Anton, the Gustav Sonata explores the passionate love of childhood friendship as it's lost, transformed and regained over a lifetime. It's a powerful and deeply moving addition to the beloved oeuvre of one of our greatest contemporary novelists. Okay, so I mean the story it's not a crime story or a sort of spy-based story as I thought it was, but it is a war-based story. And I think my sort of instinct was right. It's not a story I'm particularly interested in. It's a story about male friendship. I personally would potentially like to read more about female friendship. So I'm thinking of the Neapolitan series that I read recently, Elena Ferranti. That's about female friendship, which I think potentially I would find more interesting. So actually, out of Offshore and the Gustav Sonata, I would say I'm more likely to read Offshore by Penelope Fitzgerald than I am the Gustav Sonata. And a bit more about Rose Tremaine. I've heard Rose Tremaine's name. Obviously she's published a lot. And what I didn't realise is that she was the former Chancellor of the University of East Anglia. And you may not be aware, but the University of East Anglia has a really big writers' programme. Quite a lot of English novelists have come out of Norwich in their postgraduate writing programme. I think Ian McEwan was one of them, could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he was. And then there was one who wrote, I can never remember authors' names when I'm on camera, but quite a few writers have come out of that. So just looking at her books, I have to say I don't think I have read any of Rose Tremaine's novels, but potentially I might do now. So the Gustav Sonata actually is her, based on Wikipedia, is her latest novel written in 2016. And in terms of awards and honours, she's won various prizes. So the third novel is really interesting. It's actually a part of a trilogy. called the Deptford series. The trilogy consists of Fifth Business, which was written in 1970, The Manticore 1972, and Worlds of Wonders 1975. And the series revolves around a precipitating event. A young boy throws a snowball at another, hitting a pregnant woman instead, who goes into premature labour. It explores the long-term effects of these events on numerous characters. This sounds really, really up my street, and it was that of the three, it was the one that I preferred the most, but I didn't realise it was like this. I love novels that explore the what-ifs. I'm thinking of 4321 by Paul Auster. I'm also thinking of How to Be Both by Ali. The name's completely gone, and yet I know her. Ali Smith. So I do love novels that explore the what if this happened instead of that. So this looks interesting. It says the Deptford trilogy has won praise for its narrative voice and its characterisations. The main characters originate from the same small village. Each carries a secret that crosses the lives of the others and drives the plot forward. Fifth Business is considered one of Davis's best novels. The second novel, The Manticore, won the Literary Award in English language fiction in 1972. What is interesting is that Davis takes the view of different characters in each novel and expresses each in a different style. The tone and unconventional literary devices of metafiction have led some later critics to suggest the series as a precursor to what has been called slipstream fiction in the 21st century. I'm not even sure I know what slipstream fiction is, but I actually am interested in this. The Fifth Business is narrated by Dunstable, later Dunstan Ramsay, who grows up in Deptford. After World War I, he becomes a teacher and serves for decades at a college. The epistolary novel takes the form of a letter Ramsay writes to the headmaster of Colborne College after his retirement. He feels ill-used by an article about him in the school paper. He recalls how, as a boy, he ducked a snowball intended for him, and it hit a pregnant woman instead, and she gave birth prematurely. The incident and related events deeply affected Ramsay's life. So it really is, as I thought it was. It's basically looking back on his 40 years of life and the small events that maybe other people didn't notice that have shaped him. And this particular incident has clearly followed him through his life. And I think that's really interesting, how one chance event that happens to us can then completely affect the rest of our lives, or how we get on with the rest of our lives. So I do absolutely love novels like this. So I'm definitely going to be reading probably all three of this trilogy. So thank you, Shawn, for introducing me to Roberts and Davies. Not so sure about the other two. I potentially will have to give Offshore a go because I've got it on my shelf. I obviously asked for it as a present for some reason, or bought it for some reason, so I potentially will give it a go. But yes, I really enjoyed doing that tag. I hope that Shawn enjoys reading the novel extracts that I have chosen for him. Thanks very much for watching, and I will see you again soon. Bye bye.